Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of B is for Build. In today's episode, our goal is to start the engine. We're gonna start the engine for the first time on the Huracan. Stay tuned. We're gonna be the first ones to start an LS engine in a Huracan in the world. Before we get down to work, I want to take a second out to thank our sponsor. This part of the episode is sponsored by War Dragons. War Dragons is a really awesome game. I've been playing it a lot. I'm having a lot of fun. It's a real-time strategy game where players directly control different dragons to attack enemy bases. There are over 150 different dragons to breed in-game, and each one has different attacks and different styles of play and different characteristics to play with. It's really fun when you breed a new dragon, especially like an elite or a rare dragon, and they just start dominating. It's really fun to level everything up. One thing that I really like about the game is you can attack and defend in real time. So if somebody attacks you when you're sitting there, you can literally jump on and defend, or you can defend your other teammates' bases, which is really cool. And overall, the game, like when you start, it seems almost a little bit easy, but then as you start to level up, you learn more about the game. It gets more and more difficult and more challenging, and breeding better dragons becomes a big part of it. And it's a really, really fun, challenging aspect of the game, which I really like. War Dragons is partnering up with Stack Up, which is an organization dedicated to bringing both veterans and civilian supporters together through the love of gaming. You guys know we love our vets. We do fundraisers for them every year. Kyle is one. So when you go to install War Dragons on your phone or tablet today by clicking the link in the description, you're gonna learn about how breeding your first dragon will help to contribute to Stack Up's cause, which is super, super awesome. And if you wanna learn more, there's also gonna be other links in the description about how you can help support. So guys, let's raise some support for vets. Let's do something awesome and get an awesome game at the same time. Links in the top of the description. Pause the video, go click it right now, come play with me. B is for Build is my username on there. I dare you, come after me. You might beat me once or twice, but I can get revenge. There's a revenge button. Anyways, huge thanks to War Dragons for sponsoring this part of the episode. Now let's get down to work. All right, so if we're gonna start up, we gotta do a lot of changes to this setup right now. So we need our clutch and our flywheel to be in there for the starter to be able to engage that to kick the engine on, which means that we gotta take the transmission off of the engine. Also, we gotta put our gasketing in our manifold and our intake manifold, as well as the throttle body. So we gotta do a lot of work, which the first bummer thing is we gotta undo the fuel lines and deal with the fuel drippage and whatnot. We'll clean all that up, and then we gotta go ahead and take the intake manifold off, work on that in one section, and then we gotta take the engine transmission out of the car and go work on that in another section. All right, we got the trans pulled off of the engine, and now we are ready to start working on our clutch, pressure plate, and flywheel. So that's this unit right here. So this part needs to bolt up to the back of the engine. This part gets hit by the starter, and then in the center is our clutch. So we got to disassemble this and then bolt this to the engine, reassemble this, slide the trans axle through that, and then we can bolt it back up, and we'll kind of have the whole connecting pieces. Okay, we got our clutch and our flywheel and everything inside the transaxle. We got that all smashed back into the engine, and it's all bolted up. So now when we hit that starter, it is going to turn the engine over. So next thing is we got to mount our coil packs where they're going to go. They're not going to be up here. Our new Texas Speed valve covers do not have mounting spots for them, so we're going to mount them down lower. We're thinking right about down here somewhere cool, but to do that we're going to flip them around to make it even cooler looking, but then we got to change the wiring to them so the cylinders all fire at the right time, because remember, these control the spark. You don't want to be shooting fuel in the wrong cylinder and the spark in a different cylinder. That would be bad. So Oscar's going to go ahead and flip this wiring back to front, and then we're going to start building a bracket so we can mount them down there somewhere cool. And then guys, remember, our exhaust manifold is going to go up so it won't kind of be in the way. All right, we got the injector packs mounted. What we decided to do was a nut and a bolt through the engine mount right there. So they're gonna all mount kind of nicely down like this. We're gonna replace all these wires, get a little bit longer ones, but they're all gonna get replaced anyways. And then, so it's a nut and a bolt right now. What we're gonna do is when we pull this engine back out to put the Texas Speed one in there, we're gonna weld the nuts onto the back of that so it's just a real quick access. In case we're ever pulling the engine or doing anything fast, we wanna make sure it's nice and easy to do. So that's what that side looks like. That's what that side looks like. It's nice. They're both pretty parallel. They both kind of follow the frame rail a little bit and then dive down. So that's great. Now the next thing that Oscar's going to do, he is king of the wiring harness back here. So he's going to go ahead and start to lay up the wiring harness right under the intake manifold where it goes and run it to all the different pieces that it needs to plug into. All right, it's the next day and we got all of our wires ran, but we did learn some stuff overnight that's going to change things up a little bit. So we're going to jump back into this when Oscar gets here, and we got to go do some shopping as well. So I'll explain that in a second. For now, Kyle and I are going to do two things at once. So I am going to play with the wiring system again to try and get the keys to work. We got a bunch of new parts from Mullins. We got wiring harness over here, and basically what I'm going to do is this part that was chopped off right here, I'm going to go ahead and mend that part of the loom into right about here so that that side of the loom is just OEM. We're going back to OEM so we can plug it into the other side of the loom and see if it changes anything. While I'm working on that, Kyle's going to be working on this burnt hunk of fun. We have new control arms for the uppers, the lowers, we have new suspension, and we have new tie rod ends. So we're going to take all the garbage off and then we're going to put some new stuff on. Now we are eventually going to sandblast these things to clean them up a little bit, but right now we don't have the proper socket to take off the brake caliper, and I don't want to blast the paint off the brake caliper because it's really nice Ferrari red. Oops, Lamborghini red. So anyways, we're just going to do all the control arms and stuff like that because we have the goal by the end of this thing. We don't only want to have it running, don't want to only have the engine run up, but we also want to have it sitting on all fours. So we're going to work hard towards that. Kyle and I are going to get down to work. All right, so wiring is going on hold until I can rip apart my other Huracan. We have stance wars coming up pretty soon, so I'm not quite sure how soon that's going to be, but not very high priority. So we're going to move over to some stuff that's more higher priority. Kyle's got the control arms on one of the knuckles. He's putting the other control arms on the other knuckle, and then we're going to jump in and show you our suspension and the assembly of our suspension. Back here, Oscar's got the engine all wired up and ready to roll, so we just ran down to the store and bought a bunch of stuff for our intake manifold right here. And how it comes from Texas Speed is they have these little openings in case you want to put different things in here. You know, what we're going to be utilizing them for is our manifold, absolute manifold pressure map sensor. So the map sensor is actually built into the ECU. So what we need to do is run a hose. So we're going to block this off, block this off, block that off. We're going to put a little bolt in there to block that off. And then we're going to run a hose out of here. So Oscar is right now going to weld something up. What it is going to be a hardline fitting that goes into a little stainless steel fitting that will thread into this. So we'll thread it into there, and it's going to be a hard line. It's going to run to this hose. Then we run it to our ECU, and it can tell our manifold pressure. So that'll be under vacuum when the engine starts, and then that's where it reads the boost when we're building boost. So we're going to get that all set up, and then we'll get the manifold on the engine. We got the manifold on here. It looks great. So I did want to point out though that this is a cathedral port heads. So they're kind of shaped like a cathedral window, and these are rectangular. So they're not going to match up, but the rectangle has enough overlap, and we're running the old gasket that it'll probably be okay for our test run. So what we're trying to figure out with the test run of this engine is it going to start and our cylinder is going to fire in the right order? Injectors and cylinders all firing in the right order. That's what we want to find out, because if we were to get that wrong, we could damage our Texas Speed engine, which just came in today, and we do not want that to happen. So this is our guinea pig. This is our test mule, and we're going to make sure that if anything goes wrong, it goes wrong on this. So next steps are we're going to go ahead and run our manifold absolute pressure signal. So that's going to be a hose that Oscar has. It goes through there, around into the firewall, and over to the ECU. The ECU can read that directly through that hose. While that's happening, I'm going to put on the other exhaust. So this exhaust, not meant for this application, not going to be on this build, but temporarily it's going to help at least just point the exhaust away from our heads as we're trying to listen and make sure that we are firing on all cylinders and everything's looking good. So I'll go ahead and throw on the other exhaust, and then I'm going to throw on the throttle body as well. We got a massive throttle body that can handle the boost. It's a super upgraded one from Texas Speed. It looks really cool, and it's giant to match the giant hole right there. So I'll get that in there as well. All right, so on the engine side of things, we are looking really good. Our fuel system's back reinstalled, wiring harness is done. I installed the other of the pointless exhaust manifolds, and then threw on the throttle body. So that's connected on here. This is a what they call drive-by-wire throttle body. So you're not going to see a cable like you might see on other LSV8s. So that's installed as well. So we're all buttoned up back here, and Oscar even went as far as plugging in the starter. So we're getting really, really close here. So what I need to do now is jump into the Haltech ECU software, and I got to do two things. One is calibrate our throttle body, because since it's drive-by-wire, it's powered by the ECU in relation to the throttle pedal press, the accelerator pedal pressing. And then I also need to program in our injector sizing so it knows how big our injectors are and how to manage that. Those are two new things to me, so we may see some hiccups there. Now on the other side of progress, we got some cool stuff happening. Our new control arms are on our old knuckles. We are ready to install our new suspension. So we're gonna go ahead and build these things, put the spring on the suspension and install them, throw them on here, and then throw these onto the car. So we've got the ECU all set up for our injector types, our dead times, all that good stuff. We calibrated the throttle body so it goes with the pedal now, and then we've even got our new coilovers installed on our knuckle, kind of temporarily installed on our knuckle, and then we got this knuckle and control arm set up, like installed on this side. Now coming over to this side, we had a bit of a problem. A company, probably unknown to them, sent us a bent control arm. So it's kind of a bummer because this is like the third incorrect thing we've gotten from this company, but oh well. So we need to have this car sitting on all four if we're going to be able to push it to stance wars. So what we're going to do is hammer it back straight and then install it. We've got our suspension components on, everything except for our inner tie rod for this wheel. We actually need to press a bushing out and get the right tie rod set up. So this is missing the tie rod that keeps the toe adjustment for the wheel. But other than that, our rear suspension setup is complete. Well, there's some fine tuning to do with those springs too, but this is gonna be the first time that we go down onto the ground and see how it all sits and everything like that. This engine is 100 pounds heavier than our Texas Speed engine, so that'll be a bit of a difference as well. But let's send it down and see how it looks. Dude, that's nice.
Holy cow, that is low.
I know, it's really low. Like our power plant is super, super low in the vehicle, which is great. That's really, really good for center of gravity and everything else like that, all the performance and everything. It feels very low to us because we've had it up on the lift for so long. So, man, that's bad. That is a mean looking ride. How high is our oil pan off the ground? You think we're gonna need to modify that thing? It's, yeah, it's low. It's not insanely low. We can definitely modify it and bring it up an inch. And that would be fine. I mean, that was the game plan when we bought that oil pan, was that we'd probably have to cut it and shrink it up a little bit. But, I mean, for track driving, it's fine. There's no manholes on tracks, right? For drag strip driving, we should be just great. We nailed it with that, and the height of the ride height and everything is great. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna start up this engine, guys. So we're gonna throw some good oil in this thing, and then we're gonna test it and figure out, like, we're gonna try and figure out how to start it up. We've got our ECU programmed correctly. We think we got everything programmed correctly. We took the exhaust off because we actually think it's gonna be easier to check that we're getting exhaust out of all 8 cylinders just by doing it like this, where there's no collector. And the whole goal here is, guys, is to make sure that we are firing in the right cylinder order, that the injectors are spraying fuel, and the spark plugs are hitting in the right cylinder order, and we're running on 8 cylinders before we swap in the Texas Speed. So we're not gonna be running it very long. We're not gonna be doing anything crazy or anything like that. There's really no point. We're just trying to make sure it's running correctly. All right, it's go time. All right, it's time to start it. You ready? Maybe we should try and get it into neutral.
Oh, water.
All right, so it's kind of sounding like our battery was not up to the task of starting this engine, and we looked at the specs on it. It's definitely not made for an LS engine. So we went and stole the battery off of the vet cart, and we're hoping to get a little bit faster cranking, and we might be able to get this thing to start up. All right, everybody ready?
Yep, ready.
Man, better battery and everything. I think it's cranking so slow.
It is, yeah. Let's take out the spark plugs. Let's get it to crank. Make sure it's clearing out everything.
Let's take out the, let's undo the injectors then too, so we don't flood it. So you guys heard the game plan. Injector plugs out so we don't squirt a bunch of fuel into the engine and flood the engine. Spark plugs off. Charge up the battery again, and then we're gonna go ahead and run it and make sure that our spark plugs are sparking. And then after that, we can make sure our injectors are injecting. And then we can troubleshoot from there. But so far the weird thing is like really good batteries that are fully charged are giving it like one try to crank this thing and then they're just toast. Alrighty, so Kyle, you're gonna man the off switch. Oscar, you're going to be in charge of the cylinder checkage. I'll be the guy that hits the start button and watches the computer. Okay. So that was 3,700 RPM.
That's a little too high there.
Well, we sure did start it up. We had a small problem of it revved extremely high. Now, there is a rev limiter that we can program into the ECU, but sometimes it does that by cutting spark while leaving fuel, and you essentially build a two-step, and we're already shooting flames out of here, so we don't want to shoot bigger flames at ourselves. So, we need to make sure it's running on all 8. We played the footage back in a little bit of slow motion. It looks like it's running on all 8, but we're gonna go ahead and just full send this thing. We're We're gonna plug in a couple cameras, one on each bank. We're gonna go ahead and crank this thing up and make sure it's running on all 8 and then pull it real quickly one more time. It's revving really high, probably because we have cathedral port heads on a rectangular port intake manifold, which is letting air creep in. And if you guys kind of are more new to cars and the way that they work, essentially this limits air, and as it limits air, that's what keeps the RPM down. When you're revving up your car, you're opening that up, allowing the engine to suck in as much air as it wants. And if you allow that to be like full throttle is just, here you go engine, have all the air that you want. So if you have an air leak, it will essentially, it's like opening up the throttle position. So that's why we probably have a problem because of that reason. So time to set up a couple slow motion cameras. Let it rip one more time. That'll do it. Well, that's fantastic. We verified that it is running on all 8 cylinders. The timing seems to be good. We solved the problem that we were hoping to solve. Now we're goofing off. Oscar wants to put our boat exhaust back on here just to see how it sounds. So he's going to go ahead and throw all those on, and we'll let it rip, and we'll run it for a little bit longer. We'll see how it does. I'm wondering, is it going to shoot big flames, little flames, or no flames? All right, we had a bit of a grounding issue, as you can see by our handy dandy aluminum blocks, but we got this figured out. So here we go. We're gonna fire it up with some exhaust. Too many RPM. We cannot keep those RPMs down.
What was it idling at?
3,500. It's so scary. It's so violent.
I was standing off to the side and I was still feeling forceful presses on my stomach.
It's so scary.
You can feel that more than you can hear it.
Yeah. Well, that was really fun. We got our first startup done. I'm pretty positive what's going on is that, if you guys remember, we pointed out earlier that our heads have a cathedral style port and we have a rectangle port intake manifold to match with our Texas Speed engine. So I think air is slipping through there, which causes the idle to be a lot higher, about 3,500 RPMs of higher. So chaotic fun for sure. That's it for this engine though. In the next episode, this gets pulled out. Texas Speed engine comes in. We have a 1,500 horsepower LS engine. I'll tell you all about the specs, all about the awesomeness of that, and then we'll get it installed into this car. And then it's off to Stance Wars, because we're gonna be at Stance Wars Seattle this Saturday. Guys, check it out on my Instagram if you want more information. It's on my Instagram. Hope to see you guys there. And we also will have a new line of merch that will drop Saturday at Stance Wars and Monday online. Thank you guys so much for the support. Please remember to subscribe. I'll see you soon. Peace!